Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Clay Hills Ag Beyond the Inputs podcast. I'm Jim Oddie, and I'd like to go ahead and introduce everyone. We're so happy that you're able to join us tonight, and this is very informal. If you have any questions, please, let us know, and we want to go ahead and make this a fun discussion. And hopefully everyone will see exactly what Clay Hills is doing. Gary Weesey is a general manager for Clay Hills Ag there in Richland, Nebraska. He's with us tonight. And John Disling, he is the fertilizer and specialty products manager for Clay Hills Ag. Cade Weesey is with the marketing, and he's the brains behind everything that we're doing here on these podcasts. I am with Clay Hills Ag, working with the fertilizer specialty products with John in the sales. And we're very fortunate to have a special guest tonight, Kevin Matthews, who's an agribusiness owner in North Carolina, that is going to tell us about his operations. He's a farmer, researcher, and he is a real authority of a lot of inputs that people have tried over the years, and things that have been successful and things that haven't been. So I'd like to start it off by saying, Gary, would you mind telling us a little about Clay Hills Ag, how it started, and what your business is all about?
Yeah, Jim, I'd be happy to talk about it. We started Clay Hills Ag almost 10 years ago. It'll be 10-year anniversary coming up here. I grew up on a farm, been on the same farm since 1950, or I haven't been there since 1950, but the farm has been, and my grandpa and my dad started the thing back then. And got a couple of brothers that were helping farm and got into the farming and got to $6-7 corn. And we thought, and we used to have every animal on the place you could think of, and 3 or 4 different crops. And it got to the point where we were raising corn and soybeans, and we thought, you know what, we better diversify ourselves and maybe not be so, maybe a little bit more risk management that way. But so anyway, we decided. Had a brother-in-law that was in agronomy down in Kansas, and the group of us just got together and decided, let's see if we can't do something. We felt there was a need in our area for some alternative type agronomy centers and just a different business model maybe than what was out there. So we started the business at a location down in Kansas and went up in by Clarkson, Nebraska on our farm. And we started selling some crop protection products and a little bit of fertilizer, and just started growing. And we felt our customers were responding to what we were offering, and we started growing and adding a few people. And after a while, we decided we would split. My brother-in-law went on his own in Kansas, and we kind of went on our own up here. And we outgrew the farm and added a couple of partners that we were selling product to. That one had a fertilizer business, then we added a seed business, and then last year we added another seed and feed business. All the while we were adding some great people on staff, such as John and you, Jim, and other people that we're working with. And we developed what John has been leading us in our specialty fertilizer department, and started developing different products and started growing, beyond our local retail here. And we work with about 35, 40, what we call business to business, B2B customers, where we sell products to them, mainly across the state of Nebraska, but we're moving out into across the country. So that's kind of our story. It's been fun. It's been a good 10 years, and I'm excited about where we're headed in the next year or two and beyond that. So.
Sounds great. You got a lot of things going on, Gary, and it's very exciting. Now, John, where I really got to start working with John here a year ago was a lot of these specialty inputs. And John has got a history of working with a lot of humics and fulvics and enzymes and different specialty type of products that he puts in starters and different applications. And John, would you mind just telling us a little bit, exactly what you basically do as far as helping farmers get more out of their fertilizer dollar there in Nebraska?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been working with the humic acid, started with essentially just a humic acid fulvic scenario as an independent for going on 10 years now. And then just learned a lot throughout the way. That started back when a lot of people didn't know what humic acid was or what it does, or even any companies that had anything to do with humic acid or where it comes from. And so that was 10 years ago, that was a pretty rough start. You might get into a co-op that serviced 250,000 acres and maybe get 10 acres for trial for that year. So we obviously have come a long ways with biostimulants in general, the humic acid, and I mean, there's so many things we could talk about, but it's all the buzz, the soil health, the microbial population, the keeping a carbon-rich soil. All that has just been increased substantially here in the last couple of years. And so when I joined working with Clay Hills Ag, we kind of thought, how do we increase the efficiency of some of the things that guys are doing out there today? And, if you take this year as an example, it was a big one for us simply because, we've aligned ourselves with some pretty unique products and doing some really unique things with your starters, your P and Ks, and then also in our nitrogen applications. And we created a few products by using some biostimulants that what we did was increase the efficiency. We could back down the total spend on the nitrogen or on the P and K and just increase the effectiveness out in the field. So take a little bit of that cost. We're already trying to affect the ROI and help the ROI, but then our performance is the same and sometimes in better shape if you're aligning with the right products. And really that's kind of what we're doing. We do it with starters. We're using some different things. We're using some enzymes. I mean, we believe on an in-furrow starter, we really don't want to go and punch in a huge analysis. Our idea is to, put that analysis on the side and really kind of focus on the microbial soil health, the soil health, repopulating, doing those things. And we do it by, bioflavonoids and bulk kelp and humic and, enzymes is a big thing for us. And then also, again, I touched on the nitrogen. That's one thing that's been big for us. The nitrogen pricing this year, as I was leading to earlier, we had to find a way into the market to be able to increase the efficiency of that nitrogen, yet take a little bit of cost out and perform the same, if not better. And I think, Gary, you would attest to that. That's kind of our biggest thing as we roll out new ideas or programs or products or something. It's how do we try to find a way to benefit the end user without asking them to spend more money in the times that we're in today, which is not an easy challenge. And Kevin, I'm sure you can attest to that. This is not something that you can easily do. Everybody and their dog has got a product that comes across your table, I'm sure, along with ours. It's difficult to sift through that. So how do you sift through that, Kevin?
It's a challenge. It's wild, wild west when you get right down to it. The biggest thing is we want real farm data. We want to do it on our farms. We want to encourage other growers to do it on their farms, and not just say, okay, this works in Nebraska, so it's going to work in Georgia. There are a lot of things that are similar that do work, but you've got to actually put it out there and devote some of your acres to a research test plot. Ours started out with some of the acres, and then now it's really blowed up to a lot of the acres. And we want to see a product. Number one, is it economical? Number two, does it have a ROI? And number three, we want to identify, is this product something that maybe we don't see the ROI the first year? Maybe it's where we are in it 1, 2, 3 years down the road, and then we start looking at how our soil structures are changing. And there's a lot to that. And I thought I had my phone on silent, so I apologize for that. But we see we see a lot of situations where some of these products, when we're trying to build that soil structure, and we got pretty rough soils. I know Jim's been out here, and John, and it can be a challenge here in the Piedmont, North Carolina. And our river valley is nice; it's really good land, but I see Clay Hills Ag there, and when I think of our clay, we had a gentleman from Israel come out and we worked with him for several years there, and he was a PhD. He really scolded me for over irrigating and just doing everything wrong you could do. He was monitoring everything from Israel. So he gets to our peer group. We all sit down and meet, and I mean, I am getting bashed something bad about over irrigating, just saturating the soils. So we go down to the farm, and he's like, I want to go check the soil over there. And I'm like, okay, that's new ground. This is the second crop's ever been on it. It was in big oak trees. There's very little topsoil there. We get over there. He starts drilling in the ground and he's checking, and he kept saying dry, 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 dry every little bit. Finally, he got about 12 inches in the ground, and he turned around, and I won't say exactly what he said, but he looks me in the eye. He says, "What is this?" And um, it certainly wasn't manure, but it was. I said that is the clay that they make bricks with. I said that is a very high magnesium soil, and that particular ground, ironically, 16 years ago, or 11 years ago, excuse me, on that ground, the calcium to mag ratio was equal. It was equal, and today we are 8 times calcium we are mag, and focusing on the right products to amend that soil. And it has been huge to be able to see that you can increase your organic matter by 3%. I was told all my life you couldn't do, you had what you had, you couldn't increase it that much, except with cover crops, and you might get 1%, maybe 2. Our CECs, we went from averaging 9 on the farm to we're actually about 14 on that farm. So when you go to irrigation, we was irrigating 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, with drip irrigation, and now we pretty much are every other day, 18 hours a day. Each zone gets 3 hours of irrigation with drip, and we're staying just at the perfect level. Now, if we get in a severe drought like 24, we have to step it up and keep it going, obviously, but we still don't have to run 7 days a week, and that's just what organic matter and your CECs of your soil, when you build that, what you can do. You know, when you talked about kelp earlier, the carbon, and one thing you didn't mention, but I know it's there, but your glucose. You put those three together in the soils, it's amazing what you can do to that soil structure and that water retention and the aspiration, respiration of the soils. It's really cool. We do extensive plot work. I think my daughter cut me off at 36 trials this year. I told her up front we'd do 18, and we hit 36, and she cut me off. And I did work your guys in. We we got it worked in there. I sent you some root digs today that they done. That was kind of impressive what we're seeing underneath right now.
Kevin, we were just wondering, on any tissue samples that you pull out there, do you have any low magnesium levels on any of your tissue samples?
So what we're seeing is the farms where we was traditionally extremely low in mag and soil, or very high in mag and soils, low in calcium. Now we're inverting. We're changing that structure on many, many acres. Once we get the calcium, when we hit that 8-to-1 ratio, calcium to mag, what we're seeing then is in high yield environments, we will see our mag get tied up with that high calcium. And then we'll have to address that foliar in that crop. Fortunately, I would actually like it if I had more problems with that, because then that means I'd have all my acres with a good calcium to mag ratio. But we're getting there. We are. It takes about with a high cal lime, gypsum, and poultry litter. It's about a 5 to 6 year process to get it up there where you really want it, and to get it perfect, you need. It's about a 10 year process. It takes a while, and because
Supplemental magnesium, what's worked the best for you, Kevin?
we actually get a product from CH Bio, and that's a high mag product, and that's what we've been using foliar. Nothing really special about it. And
Okay.
quite frankly, the last 2 years has been this will be year 3 that we've had to focus on it.
Yeah.
And
On your normal farming acres, Kevin, have you traditionally used a lot of humics, and fovics in your operation?
absolutely, for probably 20 years now.
And
And
you've seen a definite difference, by using that
yeah,
in your normal program.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. One thing you notice is, I was on on one of my former business partners out in Gregory, South Dakota, and it was he's on that fringe area. It's very, very dry right there. And we was looking at his crops, and when I flew in, I was like, "Man, this place is burning up. You don't want to throw a match out or a cigarette." And it was bad looking. And so we go on down the road to his field, right on the line and state line, and his land looked irrigated. And we're walking through the fields, and we walked across the neighbors there, and good farmers. Don't I'm not putting nobody down, but it was such an eye-opening experience. Was when in the South we're taught, that freezing the ground loosens it up. That they experience, and that makes it better. So we're up there, and we're like, well, I know this ground's been froze real good every fall, every winter, and good deep freeze. But we're walking across there, and it's like going from a hardwood floor or a concrete floor to shag carpet. And he's been, he was a pioneer on the humics and the fulvics, and I've learned so much from him over the years, and it really encouraged me because I was kind of in that stage. Is it really paying off for me? I feel like it is. I think it is, but I'm not 100% sure. And then after seeing that, and then once we finally got that high mag brought down and that calcium up, then we could really see the benefits of that humic in that soil.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to address the first, the least limiting factor is your first one you got to address. In our situation, it was extremely high magnesium soils, and
Mm-hmm.
we had to bring that number down.
Mm-hmm.
That water holding capacity that you're talking about, that's when I first started with humic, I did a lot of work in the sandhills in Nebraska, and that was the very first thing that you could visually see, along with numerous phone calls from agronomists that were walking the field saying, what are you guys doing different? Because your sand knobs are not burning up like the neighbors is. And that, when you talk about humic acid, it's an investment too. I mean, if you're putting that in the soil, I feel, Kevin, is that, the soil applied takes time. I mean, you're trying to get that whole ecosystem, that whole soil thing around and going and moving. And then you kind of look on the liquid side of things. I typically look at that as, increase the efficiency in what you're pairing it with, along with always introducing the carbon source as well. But the big thing I always noticed, especially on that sandy soil, was the water holding capacity, which is on that specific situation was a very aha type moment. So.
Well, and we've been in a severe drought here in the Carolinas and on the East Coast primarily this year, and that was one thing we're really aggressive on every acre, trying to get that water holding capacity better and get that soil tilth a little better and be less reliant on fertility, commercial synthetic fertility. Um, but this year it was like neighbors calling, how are you still planting? And we're no-tilling, and I'm sitting there, I got 96% ground contact. Everything is just like potting soil. It's phenomenal what it's doing, and ours is like concrete. And then we go to some of our custom acres that we plant that had not had all that stuff applied on it over the years. And it was like the concrete that my neighbors was running into. And I'm like, man, this, and then you look at our nitrogen use ratio, we're about, we're averaging 0.5, 0.6 pounds per bushel consistently. And we're still maintaining, a 2.7 to a 3 nitrate level at 150 GDUs from black layer. And typically you can take that nitrate level, and one thing that I've been able to prove over the years with so many years of data is whatever that is the GDU is 150 degrees from black layer. If whatever number I'm at, multiply it times 100, and that's going to be extremely close to the outcome. Now you got some variables with population, harvestable years that you're having, but for us, we'll plant 22 on really tough soils up to 24, 26 on our upland. Irrigated, we'll go up 34,000, but some 40,000, 44. It just depends on what the yield goal of the crop is. But we're consistently being able to apply basically a half a pound per harvested bushel of corn. And that's where you make your money at. I mean, there's just no extra room, as y'all started the podcast out talking about, the cost this year. And I believe Jerry brought it up. And it's you got to cut every cost you can cut. That's not going to cut you. You can't let it cut you. You can go overboard. But this it's pretty. I'll tell you another thing that I've run into it's all these hidden factors. We typically a set of cultures here on a planter is going to last about 800 to 1,000 acres. And on a 24-row planter, you're going to be replacing them. Opener disc, we're actually, my planter, I do not run cultures. I run just row cleaners and opener disc. And we're getting almost 40%, maybe 60% in some years, more life out of our hardwire than we were before. That just tells you how the tilt through your soil is changing. And it's a systems approach. There's not a one size fits all. You're not going to go out there in 1 year and make a big difference. But I can tell you, if you stick to the program, you'll be like my friend in South Dakota. You'll notice when you're riding in the tractor, riding in the sprayer on this no-till ground, especially, you're like, man, it's a soft ride. It's not vibrating, and
Well, essentially what you're doing is you're creating those macropores, right? Those little tents for the biology where the roots reside. I mean, you're creating a sponge. And so I've seen ground change. It usually around here in the territories I've worked with humic acid and the different CCs and different types of organic matter soils and those things. What I tell guys mostly, if they're applying a granule fertilizer or granule humic and they're trying to get actual true soil structure change, it usually starts happening around year 3. If you're using, now you can use raw humate, and typically those are very high volume rates. I'm not against that. I think there is some good raw humates out there. But I've had very good luck with going in with extracted humics that are 100% water soluble. And it typically comes in around 3, where you can start to feel the difference just by walking on it. As you said, Kevin, it's definitely pretty interesting, but it's an investment, into your soil. That side of it is, I really like the liquid side where you kind of, increase that efficiency, maybe cut off, back off a little bit, as long as you have a very unique, I would say, humic acid. And Jim, I think you were going to talk a little bit about that and kind of what we're working with. We're sourcing a product out of Australia that we feel is a little unique in the sense of basically the leonardite deposit itself. So yeah, Jim.
Well, I've been in the fertilizer business for 48 years, and I've never seen a humic that has some of the characteristics that our humic has that we're using. It's an Omni product out of Australia, and it's got a very, very high concentration. The liquids, will run up to 24% as far as a liquid humic. What is really amazing is the negative charge. And the negative charge on these humics are 1900 negative. And all the humics that I've been, playing with over the years in retail when I farmed for 26 years, it may be 300 to 400 negative charge. So there are things that we're seeing out of this highly, highly charged humic that we never have seen before in the past. I sold a lot of nitrogen stabilizers and phosphate enhancers over the years. And the secret to so many of those products was a negative charge. They were running around 1800 negative, and because of that, you could put it with a phosphate application in with a starter, and phosphate's a -2, and they were a -1800, and all of a sudden you would see a phosphate uptake because the phosphate was not fixing in the soils. With nitrogen, the same type of thing. You would put a nitrogen stabilizer that was 1800 negative, and you would keep the nitrogen in the ammonium form throughout the season. And a crop, is unique because it can take up nitrate nitrogen or ammonium nitrogen, either one. But if you can keep it in the ammonium form, it's 23% easier for the plant to go ahead and utilize that nitrogen. And, years ago, out there in Kansas, I was pulling a dry spreader with ammonium nitrate. And I'm telling you, on wheat and on corn and on hay, you could see to the row how black green that nitrogen was. When we went to urea and we went to UAN solution, and it wasn't that same color of nitrogen. And it was because of the source, the ammonium nitrogen rather than the nitrate. That plant was utilizing it better. And that's exactly what it reminds me of with these humics now, that John has been putting it in with starters, allowing that phosphate to be more readily available, and also in the nitrogen applications. Kevin, are you putting any humics in with your nitrogen applications there in North Carolina?
Yeah,
Are you seeing a definite benefit in that application also? Are you?
absolutely. We use less nitrogen, and it's kind of funny you say one of the biggest foliar yield gains I've ever done in my life was when I used a product that's extremely high in ammonia to the point that when it's in the inductor, it'll burn your eyes good. But you're talking about getting that into a potassium deficient plant and turning it around and putting a good humic in there as a buffer. Wow. It was kind of one of them deals where the agronomists, very, very, very good agronomists, looked and like, there's really nothing we can do for this. It is what it is. And so I kind of walked through the warehouse and I'm on the phone with my buddy Chad Henderson, and I'm like, hey, what do you think? How much do I reckon I ought to do? And said a gallon. He said, I go 2 gallons. I'm like, whoa. I said, you sure? And he said, heck, we can't hurt it no worse than it already looks. We kind of got crazy on some rates. And but what I did not realize is when I threw that ammonia based product in there, what it actually done to get that in there. But when I added the humics and the sugars in, zero burn whatsoever. Now
Yes.
I did it during the
Yep.
night. I went out during the night when the Stomates was open where we could really do something. But
Yep.
absolutely, Jim, that's a big deal. It's funny you bring this up. UAN is such a expensive product right now. Urea's come down about $300 a ton. UAN's come down $10 a ton. Right here at the port. That was one of my truck drivers just beeped in there a while ago. He was at the port, but I was like, okay, I believe I'm going to cut back on this last Y drop. We typically do 30 gallons. I said, we're going to cut it back to 20 gallons and add extra humic in there.
Yep.
And I swear,
Yes.
I really believe from all the research I've done, I'll be just fine. I,
Yes.
I mean, we got to think outside the box in this environment
Yep.
we're in.
This is what John has been doing in Nebraska. And John, you can say you've seen it firsthand at the difference in the nitrogen applications by having humic in there. And I really feel that the type of humic that we're using right now, you don't even need a stabilizer because of
No,
that
I don't
negative
want to.
charge.
Yeah.
being that strong. It's
No,
I don't
amazing.
want a stabilizer.
Yeah, stabilizer is a short-term fix, and unfortunately, a lot of it hurts your biology. I'm
It
not a
does.
fan. I'm a fan of the natural stabilization with and I will say I would agree with you, Jim, in the sense that I really feel like, as you said, Kevin, how you can back off. Say you're going to put 30 on, you could back off 10, put a few more gallons of humic acid in, and that's something I've been doing for years. And to go back to the humic acid, we talked about a 24%. It's a 24% CDFA. That obviously is the most stringent testing. It seems to be, a lot of the percentages you can get, and it's a wild west, right? I mean, there are so many different. Oh, I got a 30% humic. Well, if you go and test it on a CDFA, a lot of times what you'll find is that's maybe 10 or 15, but typically people are, market is 12%. And a lot of the 12% are maybe 5 to 6% at best on a CDFA. So to find a concentrated product that is a 24% CDFA is, number one, pretty unheard of in the United States. And then also the purity of the product. There's just no impurities. And that all comes down to the humic acid groups that is found in this leonardite, in this very young leonardite deposit, compared to most of the North American leonardites that we source from. Most companies in the United States source from, or Canada, same thing. Good product, good leonardite. It's just typically it fares more for a fulvic. That those older deposits seem to fare more towards a fulvic side than a very young deposit, and those younger deposits typically have more of those sought out humic acid groups of the top three versus having, all of them combined, a lot more of an oxygen side of things, a lot more of the high negative charge. And so with that being said, I would say I've done some really cool things by doing exactly what you're talking about doing, Kevin. But one thing I've noticed by using this really high negative charge humic is that we're able to make those applications and then carry that out, do a stock nitrate test post black layer, and see more parts per million in the stock and carry that out so much further than I've ever done with humic acid. So, I mean, you could cut 10 gallons out, put a gallon of a concentrate in, and still see anywhere between 300 and 500 more parts per million in that stock with 10 less gallons of nitrogen. I mean, it's pretty damn impressive. And we're not done pushing that limit. We're still continuing to learn and do more and try to keep pushing it, because if we can increase the efficiency, if we keep going up like this by increasing that efficiency, we can really find out. And obviously you're doing that today, Kevin, getting a 0.5 per bushel. That's pretty impressive. I would say that's damn good. So I just want to comment on that as far as cutting back on the nitrogen. We've been very successful doing that with humic acid.
Well, you see, and Kevin, by you doing that, cutting from 30 down to 20 gallons and adding more humic, this is something that a lot of farmers, I don't feel, would have the experience that you've had with the humics over the years to think about doing that exact thing. They may cut down to 20 gallons per acre, but not add humic to it, and they would be disappointed in possible their yield at the end of the year, where you went ahead and substituted by putting humic in with the lesser nitrogen gallons, and you compensated for that. And things like this podcast is we want to try to make sure guys know there are substitutes that can be put in there that's actually cheaper for them per acre, and they probably are going to make more money by doing exactly what you did on that corn crop.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. It's very hard pill. The first time I started with this was probably, I think, the first trial I did on humics, a serious humic, was probably 20 years ago. And honestly, I thought it was snake oil. And then when I done everything that I had to do, I was like, this is a bunch of bull. I ain't got the time and the patience for this. and everybody was so new into it. But this product was an extremely thick product. It had to be, you had to let it set in the tank, get it incubated, everything. It was just so many unknowns. We were so early in it, we really didn't know what to do. But the odd thing is we kind of put it out and forgot about it because we knew it was a joke and a waste of time. And lo and behold, when you get that feeling, I've learned you better back up and be patient and be quiet, because there's a good chance that might be the product that shows off on your farm the most. And I will tell you, that year we had a hurricane coming. We was down there in the middle of the night picking corn, trying to get it out before the hurricane. And I'm like, what is going on? Every other pass is like amazing. What have I done? And then this is back before you could really track everything good with the technology we got now. And then I started seeing the flags at the end of the field, and I said, oh, heck, that's that stuff that I complained about so much. And it was a game changer, really. But, it took them several years to get it to where we had to process to where it is user friendly, like like I'm testing for you
Yep.
guys now. It's a lot
Yep.
more user friendly. It's a lot cleaner. You start talking about Leonardite and you start talking about, this black nasty stuff. And first thing people think about is the horror stories that they had with the black label product that was out there on the market. And I used a lot of it years ago. You just had to restrain it to get it to where it wasn't a problem with the planter. But now the products like I'm testing for you guys, one thing that I pay attention to is, does it build up in my strainers? Is it easy to use? Um, Good clean out, leave residue, and we had zero issues with any of that. That's pretty impressive when you're looking at a 24% CDFA product, and you know a negative charge of 1900. I would be expecting that thing to be gummy and be a problem. So, John, you're on to something right here. Looking at our root digs, that corn was planted June 1st was when it was planted, and you can look at the size of it. It's getting the job done.
And that corn there only had the humics in with the starter. Was there a nitrogen application, or it's just a starter so far?
No, it has. So the way we do everything, we put our nitrogen in a 2x2 on both sides of the row.
Okay.
And so it was basically 10 gallons on each side of the row. We do
Mhm.
everything by band so we can control it. We don't broadcast anything on. And so then we'll come back with a Y drop, and we
Yes.
will also put the humic
Yes.
in that Y drop as well
Yep.
at specified rates of the program.
So that product is actually, that's the Rhizovator product that we're testing with you.
Yeah. Hmm.
That's essentially a 20% humic and 20% bulk kelp. And the bulk kelp being a 50-50 blend of cytokinin and auxin dominant. So that product there is the only product which we didn't have any problems, but what I'm noticing is as we're formulating and making products in-house here, doing our formulations, if there's, out of the humic products we use today, that's the only one. I'm sure you've worked with sea kelp extracts a numerous amount of years already, probably. That it can kind of get a little slimy and kind of coat the. Yeah, you're laughing because sometimes it can be miserable. And what
Yeah.
I've been impressed with is it actually is not at all. I mean, for a 20% bulk kelp and 20% humic at that concentration, being CDFA, it should be, I mean, you shouldn't be able to see it run down a sight tube. And, we get product in totes. We dump those totes into 10,000 gallon, I think 10,500 gallon tanks. We dump them in there, and we have sight tubes on there, and you can watch the sight tube go down. No film left behind. There might be a spot or two that dries on there, but you can watch that high concentrate stuff flow down the tube. Now, anything I've used in the past, which I've tested 20s, 30s, 40s, different amount of humic acids in the field, in labs, there's nothing like that. I mean, I've been running a 6% that would leave a film behind in a tank after 2 days of planting to where you can't even see your level inside the tank on the tractor. So the purity that's kind of what's showing you the purity of the product there. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, and that's something we notate, because when we speak publicly, if I'm speaking at Commodity Classic or wherever it is, and the growers want to know, I want whatever I say, I want their experience to be like that. I don't want them to say, well, Kevin said he uses this product and man, it clogged everything I got up. That bothers me like that. Now, I have learned one thing. You got to know your audience. And what I mean by that is not everyone hears the same. So not every farmer does things the same. And assumption can really get you in a lot of problems when you assume that they're going to mix stuff in a certain order because that's how you was taught to do it, and then you find out no, they're doing it in reverse, and that's why they're having these problems. It's not that, I mean, they're great farmers. Anybody that's able to make a living farming now is a phenomenal farmer, because it's not easy out there. But it's very important to understand how and when to mix these products in, regardless whether it's a humic, fulvic, or pesticide, herbicide, whatever it is out there. You really need to pay attention. And you also, if you're using water as your carrier, you really need to be paying attention to your pH of that water and your pH once your products are put in. We're seeing a huge uh, success rate managing intensely that pH of that carrier of the products that we're applying, especially when you go to herbicide applications and foliar applications. And there may be something on the soil side, but we're definitely seeing it there. And sadly, a lot of these companies we deal with, and not getting off subject, but this is very, very important to the grower. Um, Very few labels tell you what pH that product should be applied at. And I will tell you, you get Gramoxone, Paraquat, you get Roundup, those two herbicides. You drop them down to a 4.5 pH versus a 7, and it's amazing the performance you get out of those products. So it's a systems approach. I don't want you to go saying, well, I was spraying this and I put this humic in there and I didn't get good performance. Well, what was your pH after you put the humic in there? Was it lower or higher? Was it just too blame high to start with? So the humic had nothing to do with it. It's just something you done different, and your water was higher. So just it's a checks and balance, and knowing your audience, knowing what you're working with.
And that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, because the biggest challenge that I've had working with this humic acid is the pH. And other humic acids I worked with was in, like a 7.8 to 8.5, 8.9, something like that. That's fairly somewhat manageable because the amount of volume you're putting in, and then also, what mix you're putting it into, and you can usually land at a pretty good pH. But the one con that I would say that I found with this humic acid is, it took me a long time to figure this out. And Kevin, maybe you're smarter than us here, but
I doubt it. I just make a lot of mistakes and document them.
yeah, yeah, that's right. That's how you learn. But
Yeah.
the biggest thing that I learned is over a course of years is the better quality humic, the higher the pH it is. And so the lower the pH, that's typically more of a fulvic product. So you can start sifting out what humic product you have, because there's play on words like humic substances, humic acid substances, organic acids, those kinds of things. And what you'll find is if you truly take those humic acids and you go and test them, what you'll find is the lower the pH that product is, you'll find more fulvic, and you'll find that there's more fulvic in that product. Maybe not necessarily more fulvic than humic, but more fulvic than should be if you're looking for a pure quality humic acid. And so what I found is you're up into the 12s to 13s on pH of humic acid when you get a very good quality very pure humic acid without all of those impurities and sludge and things like that, which can be a challenge. As you said, Kevin, that can be a challenge to work with. I think the biggest thing is, like you said, you got to treat your water. I mean, everything we do here is we treat our water. And
Mm-hmm.
and the biggest thing is we take that 24% and we want to meet market, and what market is 12%. So we bring that product down to a 12% and we get a true CDFA 12%, which we're already on. A lot of times we're ahead of the game, but we're doing it with a very good treated water source, which, we didn't, I don't know if we ever had that all in mind when we
No.
bought that system or what we were going to do, but I think it pretty much covers us on almost every single thing we formulate and do. And I think that's a huge key to our success on everything that we formulate, really.
Yeah, I mean, we had to go put in a new well, and then we ran into the system. It's called rain.
It's called a rain box. It's a
Rain
rain
box.
box system out of South Africa.
Yeah, we put a rain box system on it, and now all our water is, what's the pH, or we're down?
It's like, well, so we started out at 7.9, and so our water now is like right at 6.
Oh,
So
yeah.
And I don't know, what is your feeling on hydrogen peroxide to treat pH in water? Do you have I've heard some good things. I've heard some bad things. I know we're going to do some tests on I think we already have, actually. I just said the farmer hasn't shared with us as far as the efficiency going out with this water. It also has an ozone. It goes through an ozone system. And so he's gone out and he's doing some efficiency testing on his post herbicide applications with using that versus just using well water. But I have heard some guys after we did this, some negatives on having hydrogen peroxide to treat your water. Do you have anything to say about that, Kevin? Or?
No, I wouldn't. That's new to me to hearing the hydrogen peroxide. That's interesting. Our well water here is typically 7.2, and then during the summer it'll go to 7.6. Sometimes it'll go 6.8, depending on what well you're at. So you do need to keep an eye on it because it does change throughout the season. Ironically, or it does for us. Now, we don't have big aquifers. Our wells are. We've got some good wells, but nothing like what you're going to irrigate with, by no means. The What we do is we use and honestly, I wasn't watching the pH much until I spent some time in Brazil and seen how much focus they put on it. I mean, that is a primary deal. They are very intense on managing that pH of that water. And then after learning it and seeing how the nutrients move through the plants at the proper pH and how the herbicides, everything works, I'm like, well, this is all coming full circle now. Sometimes I got to put my head in it and see it, get your hands in there. The peroxide deal is interesting. A lot of people's tried AMS. I'm not really that fond of doing that part. We actually use full tech adjuvant as what we use, and we drop the pH. 2.5 gallons in a 1,200 gallon tank will drop it from 7.2 to 4.5. And then, but back years ago, the only product I had that I was really successful with was a product by Brandt, Indicate 5. And at that time, when you got your spray solution turned red, you was at a 5 pH, and really got good performance out of our foliars then. So as far as changing it, in our spray solutions or in our planters, we will add that full tech adjuvant to it to bring it down. And we had very good success with that. The hydrogen peroxide is interesting. I'd like to look into that more.
Yeah, it's kind of came new to us, and it's technology, the ozone part in the box and how it works and injects and all that it's a you can look it up. It's Rain Box, I believe, and it's a South African product, but we've had pretty good luck with it. The other thing that we'll do when we're really trying to help a customer get his spray down or his spray solution, or if we're trying to go in and do some foliar feed and some things like that, we've been utilizing, we have a product, Buster, which is basically If you're familiar with like meristems, like an upshift seed, it basically ends up P, branch ends up P, or a phosphorus enzymes, phosphorus and enzyme, like a 1258O. It's a concentrate, and so we've done some pretty unique things on making that kind of, doing kind of our own thing with that. But we can take that product and go as all the way down to a half a gallon to I'd say a quart to a half a gallon of that product in a 20 to 30 gallon an acre situation. And we can bring it down from 8.5 down to a 5.9. It's a very acidic product, and then you're getting a little bit of foliar phosphorus with it as well. That's something we like to do on certain applications. Now, that doesn't work everywhere, but that's one thing we do as well. So
Yeah. Another thing, while we're kind of talking a little bit about sprayers here, the one thing we've done that's been the game changer for us this year to really help the bottom line, we're actually 6 gallons an acre is what we're spraying at right now. And I will tell you, the parts per million of active ingredient on that plant, you drop that down to 4.5 on your spray solution, and that's after all ingredients are in. Check your pH in your sprayer at that time at 4.5. 6 gallons an acre. We're running 30 psi on our nozzles. It is unreal the kill we're getting versus 15 gallons, 20 gallons, 25 gallons, 10 gallons. It's just crazy. Man.
coverage must be efficient if you're getting that good of a kill. I mean, because that's always been the talk, right? Like up your gallons,
Yeah,
get better
absolutely.
coverage.
Yeah. And we're running his Actiply on our Haggy, and we're really anal about keeping our boom height right there at the target. We want it about if we're running ultra low drift nozzles, which is what we run, and we're about 16 to 18 inches above target. That's where we want our boom to run at, and it's very important.
So I got a question for you since we're on this topic. That's very interesting. Now, when you're going and you're doing micro and fungicide applications, are you on the bandwagon of applying those at night when that's not as open?
Absolutely. So, a friend of mine, and then I've actually replicated a lot of this. He actually did every hour for 24 hours straight. And so many, a strip and a strip and a strip, 24-hour process. That was OCD, but it was extremely good information. But I will tell you right now, you better have some serious moisture, zero stress if you're going to get a benefit from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. spraying in the middle of the day. The stomates are just not open. They're not receptive like they are. When you go, I try to start spraying foliars around 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., depending on how hot it is, and then I'll run till I can't stand it no more. And then I quit, and then I try to start back as early in the morning as I can, and then I will stop about 10 o'clock in the morning. It'll be about as late as I go. If it's a real cool day, which we don't have many of, but if we happen to have one, I might run a little further during the day as long as the plants look relaxed and I feel like I can get it in. But if I'm going to go for a yield contest or really try to go after something, I'm going to do my best to spray that around midnight to 2 a.m. And you're looking at about 12 bushels an acre difference in the same foliar over a 24-hour period if it's sprayed at the right time.
That is absolutely great.
Unreal.
It is. You can hire a lot of help to do that if you need to, if you can guarantee that.
Yep. It's amazing. And, you don't have to worry about the wind and all. The air is calm. You can truck. You can get over some.
So that's something that you're doing on your regular fields, no matter if that's a competition field or anything. I mean, that's just your normal standard practice now.
Yep. Pretty much. I've got one hired hand. He does not like working that late at night, and he's bad to run during the day as much as possible. But I might have him doing herbicide, and I'll be doing the foliars or something. We try to. I don't mind. I mean, I actually the lighting is so good on that Haggy with his Actiply and all. Now you can see better at night, and you can see during the day because you can, you got we got the blue lights on the nozzles where we can see everything, see the spray pattern. But you got your red laser at the end, or red light at the end, where you can see if you got a power pole or something. We got small fields too. If I was out in your neck of the woods and those big open areas, I wouldn't be spraying during. I mean, y'all have to spray sometimes with 15, 20-mile-an-hour winds. I couldn't imagine that. But we got sensitive crops around too, so we got to be careful.
Yep, it's a pick and choose day situation, but there is a hell of a lot more spraying that happens throughout the day than anybody thought about at night around here. I can pretty much tell you that.
Yep, it's just amazing when those, like a soybean plant, they just kind of flop down at night, and it's unreal of the nutrition you can get in that plant when it's in that position. Otherwise, during the day, it's focused on that sunlight. It's spiked up, perky. It's wanting all the sun it can get, and but it makes a difference. But it's just if you're willing to do it or not. That's the thing. It ain't always fun and it ain't sexy, but sometimes you got to get out there and make the best you can.
Well, and that goes to the point I was going to bring up. Those are the free bushel things, right? Those free bushels, those are the things, and
It
we
is.
call them free, but it might take a little extra, tie up your boots and go do something you don't want to do.
Yeah, and I get calls religiously, and if I've got guys they're wanting to put fungicide out and wanting to put foliars in, and you're talking spending some 20, maybe $50 an acre on some of this stuff when they start you know daisy chaining everything together. And I get talking to them, and they say, "Well, we're gonna start spraying right now. We're gonna spray all day." I'm like, "Just keep your money. Don't. I mean, if you're going to go out there in the middle of the day, in the heat of the day, 90+ degree temperatures, just maybe if it's irrigated, maybe you're okay, but I just don't consecutively get the ROI versus when that plant is under no stress. If that plant's stressed, I don't need to add nothing else to it. And sometimes you don't realize it's stressed.
Do you ever use, Kevin? Have you ever used seaweed extract and things like that? Like in our product, it's a bulk alp, the cytokinin and oxin-dominant. Are you using those for a stress mitigator situation? Have you been in the past and putting that in? Maybe everybody's got a stress mitigation product that's $7, $8 an acre.
Yeah.
I've found that I think we can do some really unique things with some of these PGPs that, you can be at a better price point, maybe put a couple extra dollars in your pocket and really kind of do maybe even a better job at certain times.
Yeah. So yes, we do. We've had experience and tons of experience with different stress mitigation tools. Some work, some don't. Um, I guess most all of them will work to some extent, but they may not ROI. For me, if I say it works, that means it ROIs. I mean, point blank. I don't care if I get a 2 bushel yield increase, but if I spent $8 to get a 2 bushel yield increase, I ain't made no money. That bottom line. The kelp part, we're seeing more and more of that, and I'm not experienced enough to give you the reasonings behind the successes and the failures, other than the fact I can go back through my records and show what worked and didn't work on that. And it's just a lot to take in as a farmer when you're sitting here looking at all these different options. I mean, you got your humics, your fulvics, then you got humics that act like a fulvic, and and you brought up a point there talking about the pH. I think that's something farmers need to be educated on so they can distinguish what they're buying and what stands it apart. I think that's the area you really need to, help anything you can do to help educate, because there's so much. I mean, the farmer's trying to be the banker. He's trying to be the he's trying to, purchase the products, merchandiser, and sell the product. And then he's out there trying to grow the crop. And he's got so many different hats that anything he can learn to help make a better educated decision is a big deal, because think about it. How many, I will not name no names, but I know a good young man, and he works for a large retail company, and he has got a group of farmers that's following him, and he is making suggestions to them. And I just shake my head and I'm like, that is not going to pay money for him, but he's getting a commission off everything he sells. And then I looked at one of them the other day when he was telling me this, and I said, he had a very successful company that he had just sold. I said, when you was in that business, would you have made financial decisions that could break your company based off someone with no experience in that line of work? He said, no. I said, well, the gentleman that's give you all these recommendations has never farmed a day in his life. He's never had skin in the game. I said, he's the same age as my son. How do you feel comfortable spending millions of dollars off those recommendations when he's a great kid, very smart guy, but he has no experience in the successes and failures? He gets a paycheck every week, whether that product works for that farmer or not. And that's very concerning to me. And that's one of the biggest reasons is I enjoy the research that we do, and sharing those failures is to try to keep that grower. And John, you've seen it, and there's no way you guys there in the competition that you got could build a business unless you had a reputation of putting the farmer first and doing everything you could. And y'all have had tremendous success. And that's one thing that I believe is a key, is the fact that y'all can educate the grower and you know what it's like to be a grower.
I think that's the slogan that Clay Hills that you guys created a long time was farmers helping farmers. And that's one thing that I've really felt at home here working with Clay Hills is that exact thing. I mean, is there opportunities where we could sell a humic acid for $10 or $12 a gallon, like everybody down the road or down the street or anywhere else in the United States? There's guys that are doing that because they can get that. We don't feel that's right, because we have to do our job and get things price pointed to us to be able to share that cost on and help the end user. And then I'll let you speak a little bit about how you build your business based on that. But that's the biggest thing, is if we can't find a win-win, and that win starting with the end user, we absolutely are not going to win. It's not sustainable.
No, and it's not right. I mean, the bottom line, it's not right.
No.
Number one, if our customer, the farmer, is not successful, then we'll never be sustainable. And have to start there. And just the last 3 years, John mentioned it earlier, we will not, we're not going to roll out anything if we believe it works. Yes, we're going to talk ROI or whatever, but it's really a non-starter if we go to the farmer today and say you need to spend an extra $50 an acre. I mean, that's just, most farmers are not going to even give you the time of day. And but in the end, you have to have good products and good people, and people that care about their customer and each other. And we build a culture, I think, that reflects that. And we're not selling products just to sell products. That's not what we do. If it doesn't work, we're not going to go down that road. And I appreciate, Kevin, you doing some testing for us, because we want to know, is what we're doing or the path we're going on, is that the right path? Because we want to be doing the right thing for everybody. And we do talk a lot about it has to be a win-win-win. I mean, but first and foremost, it has to be a win for our farmers. And then and we're not going to apologize to, everybody needs to make a little margin. We want to give back to the community. We want to have good people in our organization. We need to take care of them, and so they can grow their family in our geography, in our region. But it has to be, so we're not trying to, but we don't need to be greedy, and we don't need to, put somebody out of business just to make our business successful. So
And I think that goes the same with our partners that we're developing and building throughout the United States. I
Yep.
mean, that culture, I mean, we're not working with people unless they, you know, the culture fits the same. We have the same ideals as trying to think about the end user. Even though it's that retail grower may not be our direct customer, but the whole idea here is to make sure that they're always getting a win. And if they get a win, we all get a win, as long as we can put that all together. That's what it's all about. And the great thing is we do have a group, and like you said, having some experience on the farming side of things. I used to farm. I mean, everybody here has some sort of connection directly to a farm to some extent. And that means a lot when it comes down to a grower trusting, you know, your end recommendation, or even just your thought process.
Yeah.
And and you understand the stresses on the farm, and that goes a long ways. And you don't have 200 different corporate employees overhead, between the farmer and the and you guys, and that's a big deal.
Yeah.
But now, one thing you did ask about the stresses and using. What we have found success in is when we watch that forecast religiously, and we watch that crop stage. And if we're going into what I call, you'll hear me talk a lot of times about trigger stages of the crop. So we'll do corn, for example. So we got one trigger stage, and that's V4, V5. We're setting the girth of that ear. So that's very, very important. We want to minimize stress then best we can. Then the next time, everybody knows pollination. We want to keep it. If we can use a lot of those stress products and lower that canopy temperature. It might not be but 2 degrees, but sometimes that 2 degrees is the game changer on pollinating that corn and getting a good ear feel. Then our third leg of the stool, which is that main trigger factor that 90% of the growers don't even think about, is R4 to R5. That is when we're packing that punch, and that's when we're getting that big thumbnail kernel. Anybody that's had nice corn yields, the bigger that kernel is, the better the yields. I mean, it's just the way it is. Same way with soybeans, bigger the seed, the better the yields, for the most part, for that plant. So if you know that you're going to hit stressful environmental times, that is another tool in the toolbox that you can get out there, especially in areas where you can get an airplane up and you can get a pile of acres late one evening or early one morning. Go ahead and get that stress mitigation product out there a few days. You got to know what product you're using, but you need to be able to have it in that plant where that plant metabolizes it to be ready for that event that's fixing to happen. And my friend in South Dakota he's just amazing of knowing how to do that. Their geography allows them to cover thousands of acres extremely fast. And it can be, I've seen it save his crop several times, and same way for us. We've seen it save ours. I will say there's been some situations that I made the insurance company money instead of me money. I'd have been better off not to spend nothing in 24, but we didn't know it was going to stop raining for the rest of the season then, and then get hit with 2 hurricanes. So you just got to have a tool in the toolbox and understand when to use it and get it out.
And that's a common theme, right? I mean, the weather, Mother Nature, that can be your friend and can also be against you. And those are the things you just absolutely can't control. I know you guys went through, what was it, two very tough years in a row?
Yeah, I mean, 2012 was horrible.
Yeah.
But early, even in the 20s here, we've had some droughty years, and you just didn't know when the next rain was coming. And we're mainly dry land. And we may have 1/4 of irrigated, otherwise everything else is dry land. But so yes, we don't know, and we're at the same thing. But Kevin, you made a good point. You made the insurance company money that year, but you made the best decision you could at the moment you made that decision. I mean, obviously we could all go back and change a lot of decisions after the fact, but can't do it. And we've done that too. And there's only 1 or 2 years where you just completely pulled the plug, where you just said, we're not going to get to insurance levels. But we're generally optimistic people, and we can't. It's hard to give up on a crop, right? You only get
Oh, yeah.
talk to somebody about, if you're lucky as a farmer, you can get maybe 40 crops in your life or something like that. So it's a big deal. Every decision you make, every year you're out there, you know, when you put it that way, you just have multiple handfuls of chances. So it's a big deal to do it right and get him, so, but we keep going. We keep, what, so I didn't realize 24, or I guess I didn't know 24 was a tough year out there. I guess you kind of get absorbed in your own little geography sometimes, but yeah, it happens everywhere, doesn't it?
Yeah, 24. I've told them many of them would have been a great year for a country song. We was started out, along the wet side. Then we went to the drought, and then we went to the flood and the hurricanes, and it was devastating to for this state, and especially those folks west of us that got hit with Helene so bad it come right up through us and then turned and went due west, and it's just unreal. But it's just a challenge that you have and you go for it, and there's going to be a lot of farmers. There's a lot of farmers hurt real bad this year. It's very dry east of us. A lot of corn's done. It won't get harvested at all. It's done burnt slap up, and you really hate that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I was going to ask you if it's gotten. I know it was dry. I mean, while you guys were starting planting it was extremely dry, as you mentioned earlier. But there's portions out there on the East Coast from North Carolina that never. I mean, just didn't come around, didn't get any. Well,
I tell you what, it's been really, really great visiting with you, Kevin, tonight, and we sure appreciate your input. And I was hoping maybe in a few months, maybe this fall, we could have Kevin back again and visit and see what you think about the harvest and a lot of the different products that you've done research for, especially for us. So, but thank you so much, Kevin. It's always a pleasure listening to you.
yes, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Kevin.